How's it going, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture. It is time for Nick at Night, my weekly non-spoiler comic book review show. I just got done reading my books. I'm going to tell you what I thought about them. Coming up next, stick around. All right, welcome back. So we're going to get into Marvel first. The first book we're going to talk about is Devil's Reign Omega, mainly from Chip Zdarsky, but we have a couple other stories in here from Rodney Barnes and Jim Zub as well. The main story in here from Chip Zdarsky is about 16 pages long, and it does play right off of the Devil's Reign event. So if you haven't read that one yet, I recommend going back and reading that first before jumping into this one. But basically, this issue does tie up a few little things that happened at the end of Devil's Reign. We have a power structure that kind of shifted a little bit. We have Wilson Fisk kind of going off doing his own thing at the moment. We have Luke Cage rising up as the mayor in New York. We have some unfinished business with Matt Murdock and what happened to him in the last issue, or supposedly happened to him in the last issue. I don't want to give too many things away, but basically this is going to be a Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones centric book. And it's just kind of wrapping up, what do they do now? I mean, they have the Purple Man's kids kind of in captivity. How are they going to reconcile that, or how are they going to treat that situation? We have the masks are still illegal in New York. So they're trying to figure out what that's all about and trying to battle the Thunderbolts, trying to figure out what they need to do against that. So that's basically the entire intention of this book and what Luke Cage is going under right now. So it was a pretty solid book. I mean, it was a stepping stone in the direction that we're going to be heading with Daredevil here coming up in the near future. We knew from the previous issues that one of their main objectives is going to be the Hand eventually, and it's going to be interesting to see if they tie into the current Punisher run, because obviously there's some crazy stuff happening right now, and they have a villain that they're up against at the moment. So we'll see if they can take care of that, and if they ever run into Daredevil and Electro. So I'm going to be interested in that little crossover if it ever happens. But Devil's Reign Omega, nice little stepping stone. Nothing crazy happened in here, but it was good to catch up and see where everybody was. The next Marvel book we read this week was Legion of X #1 from Cy Spurrier. Now, I will say that Legion of X is not very new reader friendly, but Cy Spurrier does do a decent job in the first few pages of this, of kind of setting up where we are right now inside of Legion's mind. He's kind of set up this little dimension. I believe he calls it the altar. It's this little dimension where all these different mutants can go and live and kind of rehabilitate or do whatever they need to do to kind of escape the reality of their lives at the moment. So he does give a few pages to that to kind of explain where we are and what the purpose is. So that was at least good. Shortly after that, we're introduced to what Nightcrawler's up to. He meets several different people that have these interesting rituals, and they're very interesting characters to meet and see, either visually or through the commentary and through the dialogue they have. He seems to be running into some of extremely weird people, and so that was kind of interesting to see Nightcrawler kind of getting through those situations. We have some great cameos of older, maybe not so mutant characters that have been in the X-Men lore in the past, kind of show back up in this book. So that was kind of fun to see what they're up to. The art is really interesting in this book too. I do enjoy it. I do like what I'm seeing. The coloring is really nice, and there's lots of action, and it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of wasted panels or any wasted space in this book. There's a lot of threads going on, a lot of interesting things happening in this book. So again, if you're not really familiar with what's going on in Way of X or in X-Men books in general, you might be a little bit lost as far as who these characters are and where they fit into the grand scheme of things. I will say it's really fun to see Legion again, and he's got a really interesting dialogue between him and the Quiet Council, especially his dad, Professor X. So I did really like that. He brought some visions with him, and he shared it with everybody that didn't quite make any sense to those people in the Quiet Council at the moment. And we're kind of setting the stage right now, I think, for future events that are going to be coming up very soon in the X-Men books. And then at the very end, we do get another first appearance of a character that shouldn't be there. And so lots of questions are going to arise from that character as well. So Legion of X #1, not too new reader friendly, but it was very interesting. I think Cy Spurrier did a great job of at least writing this book in a way that sets up a lot of the future events that are going to be coming eventually, introducing a lot of cool characters in here and making the world interesting and fun. Now, I didn't understand about half of it that I read, but that's the thing about being a newer X-Men reader. You get to jump into these books and you get to learn along the way. So Legion of X #1, it was an interesting read. If you're a long-term X-Men fan, pick it up. Let me know what you think about it down below. The next Marvel book we read was Amazing Spider-Man issue #2 from Zeb Wells and John Romita Jr. Now, I will say that I did enjoy issue #2 2 a lot more than I did issue number 1, just because issue number 1 felt like it had a lot of purposeful gaps in time and in story, which led to a little bit of confusion about why certain characters were acting the way they were. I will say that cover A is a complete bait and switch. There's like no Mary Jane at all in this issue. So that was an interesting choice to put on a cover A. They need to be sticking to these Tombstone covers because that's what this whole story is about. So we do have some awesome fight scenes in here. Peter Parker as Spider-Man doing what he does best. If you enjoy that Spider-Man humor, I think you're going to like this a lot. And in previous issues, we had Tombstone kind of throwing down the gauntlet. He was really pissed off at Spider-Man for busting up one of his deals with some of his folks. And so he kind of put a warning out to Spider-Man. And this is the issue where they duke it out. And so I did like what I saw as far as the battling goes. The art was interesting too. John Romita Jr., he's kind of hit or miss for me personally. I'm not a big fan of how he does faces in general and some of the poses and some of the forms, but I will say it was illustrated pretty well. Now, Peter is pretty dumb in some of these, or Spider-Man's pretty dumb in some of these situations and gets himself in a bad position. And but it's got me really excited, and I really hated to see this issue end. I want to know what happens in the next issue for sure. And so, yeah, Amazing Spider-Man number 2, not a bad read. I can't wait for number 3, and I'm glad I say that. I'm glad I'm really anxious to read the next issue of Spider-Man, and that's where we are right now. Not a bad read. The next Marvel book we read was Punisher issue number 3 from Jason Aaron. If you like to see the Punisher in like a unstoppable, very ruthless kind of a manner, this might be the book for you. I mean, the guy is straight up torturing Hydra agents in the name of this demon that he's serving right now under the Hand. Now, we do get some hints as to what the next sacrifice from him might be, or the next thing that he is wanting in his life. And so they kind of were building on that since issue number 2, after we got the big reveal in issue number 1. So if you haven't caught up to any of that stuff, I won't spoil it necessarily, but you're working with the Hand. You're basically fighting for the devil or becoming the devil himself. And so there's always a price to pay for, you know, the rewards you're given in that situation. In this issue, we also do get a little history lesson about the first time that he actually killed somebody, that Frank Castle killed somebody. So they go into a big story about that, which was very elaborate. And the guy kind of had it coming, kind of a situation right here, but it does kind of tell you how messed up Frank Castle was from the very beginning. So that was a really cool ad in here as well. We are starting to see the kind of cracks in the armor, though. This plan's not going as well as Frank Castle was hoping. Some of the things that he's gotten back in his life, they're not exactly working out, and he's kind of in this zone right now where his wife is becoming more and more confused about where she is, where the kids are, and things like that. She's having these little mental breakdowns, these little panic attacks, and he's having to console her, essentially. So, you know, he's getting what he wants, but at the same time, it's not really working out. And these aren't really true forms of them, or they're kind of suffering in their own ways. And he understands the whole truth, and he's got to have a layer of guilt on top of that, of course. So it is interesting to see where it goes from here. We do get another hint at, not a hint, but we do get a little mini battle with the big villain that they're going to introduce into this. The next thing that Frank Castle has to take on as the Punisher, leading the Hand. And I can't wait to see that battle, honestly. It's going to be pretty awesome. But again, we just covered Daredevil here a minute ago. I want to know when these two are going to be crossing at some point. It's going to be interesting to see what Daredevil and Elektra are going to do against Punisher at the command of the entire Hand army. So I want to see that. When is that going to be coming too? I'll be looking forward to that. All right, and the last Marvel book we read this week was Hulk issue number 7 from Donny Cates. And I got that awesome J. Scott Campbell cover because that's really a killer cover. And listen, I got to tell you, I liked the first arc. I didn't expect a whole lot from it once I understood what the premise was. You know, we have that compartmentalized Bruce Banner Hulk situation going on in Starship Hulk or Spaceship Hulk or whatever you want to call it. And so, you know, the first arc was interesting. I kind of accepted the story for what it was, you know what I mean? And I wasn't too thrilled with how the first arc ended with Titan and everything like that. But I think what Titan taught us was there is some kind of an unlimited source of anger and power and destruction, and just this ability to overcome any situation that's within the Hulk right now. And we are exploring what that means more and more and more, even since the last run, the last volume. And so we are still exploring what that means. And I think Donny Cates is a little bit more on the nose as far as what that actually is and how that manifests. And we are seeing that in the pages right here. We've seen this Hulk do some insane, incredible things, especially the engine room Hulk, and that's translated outward into the Spaceship Hulk. So that has been fun. Now with him in this whole battle with Thor right now, and that celestial hand, that arena that was built, it is very interesting. And now we have the introduction of a new character. We have that celestial armor Hulkbuster Iron Man coming in. He's kind of the third man right now, teaming up with Thor in some sense against this Hulk. Extremely overconfident, of course, going up against this Hulk. But they're quickly realizing that no matter what they throw at this Hulk, it is nothing compared to the pent-up anger and unlimited power that the Hulk has. And of course, all hell breaks loose. And it's just chaos, man. It's just chaos. I have a new appreciation of how much I can just read a comic and go, okay, we're just going to see what happens. We're just going to see what happens, because it's just nuts. It's absolutely crazy. And so the last few pages of this comic are kind of shocking, but at the same time, you're almost expecting things to be insane and shocking. And so it puts me kind of in a weird place emotionally when I read this book. But I'm just reading it. I'm having a good time. I'm turning my brain off. And it's at least absurd, right? I think that's what we could all agree on. Hulk number 7. We're gonna be keep going with it, man. I'm telling you. And then Thor, I think it's gonna be 26. Will be part 4 of this Banner of War, and I think we dip back into Hulk one more time to kind of finish it out. And there'll likely be some kind of a one-shot after that or whatever. So yeah, we're going to keep going with it because it's just absolutely absurd. Let me know what you guys are thinking about Hulk down below. All right, that was it for Marvel. We're going to hop over into DC. We're going to start with Swamp Thing, issue number 13 from Ram V, Spicer, and Perkins. And Swamp Thing continues to be one of the best drawn, best written books that's out right now. That has a lot to say with Ram V and Spicer and Perkins on the creative team. I cannot wait to read each issue that comes out. With that said, this is issue number 13, so we only have a few more issues, a couple more issues before this run is over, and there are a lot of plot threads that they have going on right now. I don't know how they're going to wrap it up in just a few issues, but we're going to see what they can do. But the issue does start off with this introduction of this mechanation. It's kind of like another Avatar in a way, and the way that I perceive it right now is it's essentially a invisible, kind of like a lost city, kind of underground. You can't really perceive that it's there unless you're looking for it, and its main drive is just to create whatever it can. It's machinery, it's gears, it's oil, it's grime, it's dust, it's rust, and it's taking any organic form of life it can take in raw materials, and it just produces, and it doesn't care what it produces. And sometimes what it produces are abominations that can actually attack. So we do get a little understanding of what this machine avatar kind of is, or state of being is. And we do get some cool battles with some interesting things that it produces in there. At the same time, we do have that Trinity character who's kind of like a radioactive nuclear avatar that was created out in the desert with some nuclear weapon testing sites and things like that. She's kind of coming into her own. I call it a she because she's in female form. She does take the form of man, it says inside of this book here. And she's kind of just understanding what her surroundings are. She comes across some humans, they have some interaction. She's kind of developing a consciousness at the same time. She's understanding what these beings are and what their motives are, what their actions are anyways. And so she learns loss pretty early on, and fear and anger, resentfulness pretty early on in her creation. So it's going to be interesting to see how that character develops and where that character goes from here. So that'll be pretty fun. And then towards the end of this book, we have this interesting conversation between Swamp Thing and the different trees and beings of the green, including his brother. There is a war coming. There is something approaching Earth that is going to pose a significant threat. And we do get a old Justice League member in here making a little cameo appearance, reinforcing that this threat is on its way and all forms of communication have failed. This being, this species, whatever it might be, seems to be plant-based, and so they wanted to reach out to Swamp Thing, see if he can provide any guidance or suggest what to do, of course, from there. So we have a lot of different plot threads going on. We have 14, 15, and 16 to wrap this up. I don't know how he's going to do it. It's going to be fun either way, so Swamp Thing is pretty much a must-read if you're on DC right now. All right, we're going to dip over into indies. We're going to go into Something's Killing the Children from James Tynion IV. I got to say, I do like these die-cut covers right here. I got that Erica Bloody one, I believe it is. There's several of these right now, but I do like these die-cut covers. I just wish that they would actually ship them properly so they don't get all banged up and things like that in the shipping process. But I'll tell you what, it is really cool to be on Something's Killing the Children again, especially after a lackluster Volume 1 of House of Slaughter. Now, I wouldn't say this is a boring issue of Something's Killing the Children because we do get a lot of Erica Slaughter in here, something we missed in the last few issues of Something's Killing the Children. We do see some old faces from her little bit previous issues, like 16 and 17 and whatnot. That guy who ran the farm where the different trials were being held, we do get him back in this book. They have very interesting conversation, and we understand what his role is going forward with the different houses and stuff, so that was pretty fun. We do touch on the new character that was introduced in the previous issue who kind of takes out different threats, and she seems to have a little bit too much fun taking out different monsters and humans and kids when you need to, because you can't let these ideas and fears and things like that spread. It's kind of like Department of Truth, like we talked about before. The more people understand that these monsters are real and what they're capable of, the easier they are to manifest in reality, and the more havoc they'll create. Unfortunately, this lady has been brought in to take out Erica because she has gone rogue in the House of Slaughters, and now she has arrived in Chicago, so now she's going to be on the hunt for Erica, and she doesn't have any idea this is happening. She's got her own things going on. She's dealing with a very dangerous, specific monster that she hasn't run across before, and she's actually pretty scared, and she doesn't really know how to handle it, so it's going to be kind of fun to see how these two interact when they finally do, and how Erica kind of comes out on top, because you can't imagine they're going to kill Erica Slaughter. At least I would hope not, although we've read stories and things like that where they take out main characters all the time, like Saga or something like that. But anyway, Something's Killing the Children, I'm so glad that it's back. I'm so glad we have Erica back in our lives in these books. And House of Slaughter Volume 2, so far we're just one issue in, and it's not bad so far. We'll see where it goes, but I'm glad to be back on the main title. All right, we're going to bounce over to Image Comics, and next we have Ice Cream Man. This is issue number 30 from W. Maxwell Prints. I will say that I do like the cover for this one because it has our black mouse and our white mouse down here. Kind of goes back to that earlier issues. I think it was somewhere back in the teens. We had our Ice Cream Man character and then his opposite, kind of like the Cain and Abel situation where they were duking it out for an issue or two. I do like when they hint at that towards later issues, and I wonder if we're going to get more of that story eventually, or we're going to get a series of these one-offs with these little hints to the previous issues. I don't know. But this issue was pretty fun. A little bit of a bait and switch issue, a little fun ending that this one had. But essentially, we have this clinical trial going on with this new hallucinogenic drug. They have two different people taking some doses of it and seeing how they react. They have little one-on-one sessions. They have a journal, and they just start their wild trips in their own unique way. This book's perspective is mostly from the doctor that's kind of running this trial right now and his assistant who is there as well. And it does touch on the different patients and how they're kind of tripping hard. One guy's not really noticing anything. He swears he's got a placebo, but you see little hints of Ice Cream Man type stuff happening in his room that he might not perceive as hallucination, but you as a reader know what's going on. The other guy's having kind of a nightmare trip at first. As they increase the dosages more and more throughout the day, they each start reacting in different ways. The guy that was feeling fine originally starts tripping really, really hard and tries to escape, and the other guy is kind of in this sedated zone where everybody's his best friend and things like that, so it's pretty funny. I will say slowly throughout this entire book, though, you start noticing some of the hints that the doctor's having during their conversations that things might not be all as they seem, and so we get a nice little interesting which side of the glass am I on kind of a situation. Am I a guy looking in, or am I a creature looking out kind of a situation in here too? So there is an interesting twist at the very end, which I did enjoy. Ice Cream Man number 30. It's another Ice Cream Man book. It's a little less depressing, I would say, than the typical Ice Cream Man book, but it's still a really good read, I would say, for sure. If you're an Ice Cream Man, check it out. If you haven't, man, jump on board and just try it out and see if it's something that you might like. You might want to add it to your monthly poll. And the last book we read was from Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples, issue number 59 of Saga. And I remember when I picked this one up, I'm like, man, that's a really awesome cover with this rainbow goldfish. I wonder if this is going to be an issue about what this rainbow goldfish is, but it's way more subtle than that. I'm not going to give away what the rainbow goldfish is, but there is a great little section in this book that takes place around this rainbow goldfish. We learn about this new character who's got this new power that was kind of exploited, and we're going to see what the ramifications of that will be here very, very soon. As far as this issue goes, it does everything right that all the other Saga books do. It has a lot of that family element in here. It has a lot of humor, some very cool dialogue. It's got great use of all the different characters that they've introduced so far. It's got that interior narration that Hazel has and that separate font that we've come to know and love, and it really ties into the overall story that they're painting in here. And so it's always a treat to read this book. I can't wait to keep going with this one. And yeah, it's one of the best comics I have ever read, and I think a lot of people agree with that. If you haven't picked it up, go ahead and do it. You can get the compendiums, you can get the trades pretty cheaply. It's a very, very fast read. We're 59 issues in, but I guarantee you can probably knock it out in a couple weeks if you tried. So that's what I read this week, and those were my thoughts. Let me know what your favorite books of the week were down below in the comments. And if you have any suggestions of books I should be reading, let me know down there as well. But as always, I appreciate you watching the video. Like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be notified of future videos. We'll see you in the comments.